through all this I get the feeling, Suchitra ji, that they're always looking for some way in which they can show India down. As the Prime Minister leaves Calgary and he's on his way for the third leg of his three-nation trip to Croatia, I think this is an absolutely opportune moment for us to make an overall assessment of what has been achieved. And as a student of diplomacy for 39 years as a Foreign Service officer, 6 years as an international think tanker, and now 8 years as a minister, I can tell you it's been a highly successful visit. Let me point to some of the more evident outcomes. I would be happy thereafter to go into detail also. First of all, I think the attendance of the Prime Minister in the G7 summit, which he has been continuously doing, I think, since 2018 or so, is in and of itself a very important thing, because that provides an opportunity to the Honourable Prime Minister to meet the heads of state and government of these important countries and to interact not only on pressing multilateral issues but also to focus on relationships which are of a bilateral nature. And since this G7 summit was being hosted by Canada in Calgary, you will recall there was a fair amount of, not fair amount, a lot of fake narrative which was flowing out of the lye producing factory which is presently anchored in the Indian National Congress. Things about not being invited, this has not happened, that has not happened. Look, the facts of the matter are, the Prime Minister has been an invitee to G7 summits now for several years now. And he not only participates, but he provides sage counsel. He is always promoting the processes of diplomacy and peace, no matter where the tension points globally are. But with Canada, I think there is a special significance. You don't need much knowledge of diplomacy to know what was happening between India and Canada. The relationship had got almost completely derailed thanks to certain factors. I won't go into that as yet. But the decision that the two sides, after a very fruitful discussion that the Prime Minister had with his Canadian counterpart, the newly elected Prime Minister, to restore diplomatic relations. I'm using words carefully. The diplomatic relations were never ruptured. But when a relationship is stalling or it's spiraling downwards, not to have resident high commissioners in each other's capital always exacerbates the problem. Now the decision that there will be designated new envoys to be stationed in Canada and India, I think is a very positive development. It means that the relationship will now be handled in a more focused manner. There's no point in situations like this going into a blame game, who's to blame for what. It takes two to tango. When something goes wrong, then it's, I think, statesman-like, which is, I think, what the Prime Minister has done. He has, had a frank discussion on points of difference. And now we will be able to, I think, get this relationship up and about. It's an important relationship. I don't remember figures offhand, but I think the Indian origin community there should be upwards of 1 million people. Our trade bilateral in goods alone should be about $8 or $9 billion. And apart from that, Canada and India have had a traditional relationship which is based on certain shared values. Forget about what happened here. And, I used a rather harsh term the other day when I was describing some of those protesters who draw not inspiration but even financial succor from one of our Western neighbors. So that is all right. And I used a harsh term. I called them Kirai Ke Tattu. And I'm glad that, apart from that show of protest, etc., they were either exhausted or didn't feel like showing up. So I'm happy about it. But the relationship, because if you have 1 million people of Indian origin staying there, they will require consular services, they will require constant, other forms of visa, passports, all kinds of services. And it's an important trade relationship. So I'm very happy that this decision has been taken to reposition our high commissioners in charge of the country. The decision on other aspects also, what I see from the readout I get from the Foreign Secretary's briefing and from other things, is very encouraging. Canada and India have many avenues and a lot of potential that needs to be discovered, including, I think, in my field, which I'm in, which is energy also. And I think there has been some work, but I think more can be done on the exchange of goods and services and other aspects. But apart from that, I think the visit to Canada also gave him an opportunity to have very meaningful interactions with the other G7 leaders. I saw some readouts of his meetings with the President of Mexico, the German Chancellor, the President of the Republic of Korea, and so on. A meeting was scheduled with President Trump, which could not take place in physical format because President Trump had to leave Calgary to return to return to DC because of some ongoing issues. On that, I don't want to comment. But the very fact that was immediately followed up by a 35-minute telephone call, and I think we've been given an excellent readout of the meeting. Several objectives were achieved. I think the fact that President Trump started by offering condolences to the Honorable Prime Minister for the deaths in Pahalgam. Prime Minister briefed President Trump on the ongoing Operation Sindoor. He provided a very clear perspective that when the Pahalgam attack took place, I think it was on 22nd April, India had made it abundantly clear that this attack will not go unpunished, and this is no longer possible to justify this as proxy this time. There is our Western neighbor has been using terror as an instrument of state policy, and a clear decision was taken. Therefore, when the events unfolded, yes, there were some exchanges. Those exchanges dealt with a message which had come through the U.S. Vice President. The U.S. Vice President had talked about the Pakistanis likely to use force, to which they got a reply from the Honorable Prime Minister that if that were to be the case, our response would be even more robust. We have never accepted, and this has been a consistent position of India, third-party mediation, and there was no discussion on any trade or any other aspect during the exchanges with the U.S. The request for a ceasefire came from the Pakistani side. It came from their Director General of Military Operation, and it was responded to. And I think after having demonstrated to the world that in those 22 minutes, 9 terror outfits, all right, which have security links also were hit, and not in a notional or a pro forma way, but, hundreds of kilometers inside Murid Ke, Bhavalpur, and also, I must remind you, the allied security infrastructure. But again, the Prime Minister has been making it clear. He provided the G7 with a very clear enunciation of position. The idea was not to attack Pakistan. The idea was to attack the terror establishment in a non-escalatory manner, and those who were perpetrating that terror, to leave them in no doubt that any attack on India, any terror attack, will henceforth be considered an act of war, and that Operation Sindoor is an ongoing process. I was just shown a message by a quote from the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. PM Carney, who said, "Honored to work with India on artificial intelligence, energy, and the anti-terror fight." So, some of my friends in the, I should now start calling them lie-producing factory, LPF instead of INC, constantly. I mean, they turn to, there's no invitation, and then when a productive 35-minute exchange takes place, they resort to, I don't know, frankly, whether this is ineptitude and incompetence, or this is pure lies. But either case, it's a lie. Then they take resort to an earlier conversation which took place in January and say, well, this is not the readout. Arey bhai, readout aane do unka. But should you or should you not accept a detailed readout by your own foreign secretary and point by point? So all I can do is, I don't want to dignify the Congress party's ongoing, hallucinatory, I would call it hallucinatory fake narratives that they go and put on. But through all this, I get the feeling, Suchitra ji, that they're always looking for some way in which they can show India down. If India achieves a spectacular military success in those 22 minutes and the evidence of the devastation caused is in the public domain through commercially available satellite imagery, the Congress party and its, lie-peddling geniuses will go into some other direction, looking for some little thing to hang on there. In the process, they not only enhance and exacerbate their own irrelevance, but show them up in front of their own party also for the kind of people that they are.